So today we're going to talk about delayed gratification. You're like, what the heck is delayed gratification? Well, you know, it's not uncommon for new owner operators now that they start making money. The biggest mistake they often make is they start spending their money. The impulse to buy is very, very strong. Uh, there may be things on your so-called bucket list that you always wanted and never could afford. And now that you're a small business owner, you start generating more cash flow. Now it seems possible that you can go get that item, whatever it may be. Uh, oftentimes it's a car, a motorcycle, a boat, an RV, something that costs, probably 10 to 20,000 or more. Maybe it's go buy a house. It's a big ticket item. And the idea of delayed gratification is that you're going to hold off. You're going to resist that impulse. You're going to delay that decision. I think this is very important for the rookie owner operator, the first time truck buyer. You know, if you have the discipline to avoid major purchases during your first 3 years or the lifespan of your first truck, that would do wonders for your business and your long-term success. It's not that owner operators lack skill in becoming successful. It's the decisions that they make early on that they have a hard time recovering from. So for example, let's say you you became an owner operator and you rushed out and you bought a brand new vehicle. A brand new vehicle is very expensive, very, very expensive. Um, and you're going to be paying on that for years to come. And then when it comes to truck repairs, you may not have the money, to pay for the truck repairs. So running out and purchasing that item on your to do your bucket list, your wish list, was kind of a mistake. Had you used the technique of delayed gratification, which means that you will buy a new vehicle, but not right now. You'll do it sometime down the road. Um, you'll make do with what you have for the time being. If you use delayed gratification, your business would be stronger. So when that breakdown did occur and it required, a significant amount of money, you had the money to do it. See, this is very difficult for rookie owner operators. They had to make the big decision to become an owner operator, and there had to be some incentive for them to do that. The whole reason for them becoming an owner operator was so that they could have a better career. They could generate more income. They could raise their standard of living, so on and so on and so on. So, you know, they're kind of in a hurry. This is why they became an owner operator. And then you tell them to delay. You're suggesting or asking for the impossible. They don't want to delay. This is their motivation. you know, they became an owner operator in order to make more money so they could afford these things. And then you're saying don't buy them. That this is contrary to uh, the reason they became an owner operator in the first place. But for those small business owners who utilize delayed gratification, this is how they become successful. They're not spending that money. They want those things, but they're going to hold off for the time being. They're like, oh yeah, I want to buy a house, but I'm going to hold off until perhaps my second truck, or I want to buy that new vehicle, I want to buy that boat, I want to buy that motorcycle, but I'm going to wait until my second truck, for example, which would be like 3 years, right? Because you'll probably buy the truck, if you bought it from Crete, you would buy it at 400,000 miles. You would hold on to it till the warranty expired, typically, and then you would, be ready for your second truck. Um, the challenge is, can you hold off for 3 years without making major purchases, without putting yourself in a financial bind. If you can, then the odds of you achieving success are very, very good. However, if you don't have the financial self-control, uh, you could always be behind the eight ball, because you're doing the opposite. You're doing instant gratification. Instead of doing delayed gratification, everything that interests you, you go out and you buy. And as a result, you're always behind the eight ball. So what you want to eventually do is become a master of the game. You want to be in a position where your finances are extremely strong, your credit is terrific, you have little or no debt, and your investment portfolio has at least $100,000 and growing. Ultimately, you want to get to that point and become a master of the game. When you do the opposite, you're in debt, you have no financial strength, your credit may or may not be that great. You become a pawn in the game. Instead of mastering the game has mastered you. You are now dependent on the game to sustain this lifestyle. You can't afford to make significant changes because everything depends on your ability to continue to make payments. You got a house, you have a mortgage, you have car payments, you have credit card debt, you have just enormous amount of responsibilities. You could have dependents as well. So everything is riding on your shoulders. And so now the game is controlling you. You're not in control of the game is controlling you. Had you implemented a strategy of delayed gratification, you could have all those things when your business is on a stronger foundation. And it comes down to your finances, your financial strength. If you're on a path of success, then you could always pick these items up at a later point when you're financially strong. And so once you've mastered the game, now you can control the game. The game doesn't control you, you control the game. Because now, you can afford to do almost anything. You have the financial strength and wherewithal to do anything. If you have problems with a carrier, you can easily change carriers. If you want to go to the spot market, you can go to the spot market. You want to take time off, you can take time off. You could do almost anything once you've achieved, a level of success. But in order to achieve that level of success, you have to implement delayed gratification. You have to put off these big ticket items, the decision to purchase, the impulse to purchase. You have to fight against that. Uh, Guys who don't have that kind of control, that self-control, they're always behind the eight ball, always. They're always playing catch up. They never can get ahead. They struggle. They struggle mightily. And the guys who have mastered the game can relax. They can enjoy it. They or have more control of their own work and personal lifestyle. If you're a slave to the game owns you. Because you can't escape your financial situation that you put yourself in. you know so this is very common for rookie owner operators. They make these purchasing decisions and it puts them in a bad spot. They did not exercise delayed gratification. They were in a hurry. They were like, I gotta get my life in gear, I gotta get moving, I gotta keep reaching for all these things. And what they really should be doing is exercising restraint and spending their money. That's hard. It's very hard. This was what was motivating them in many cases to become an owner operator. And then you take that motivation away, and it's hard for them to understand or follow that thought process. They're like, why in the world would I want to delay purchasing these things now that I'm making more money? Well, you do that for the sake of your business and your long-term success. 3 years is not going to kill you. 3 years will go by very, very quickly. And if you can go that duration without purchasing major items and save all that money, you're going to be better off for it. But that's very hard for guys to do. Only a small percentage of owner operators can actually achieve that level of discipline. And what it does, it sets you up for long-term success. Your business will become extremely strong. Conversely, if you don't, you're always, within one or two major breakdowns from being out of business. It wouldn't, if you're not financially strong, it wouldn't take much to knock you out. It's like, the wind could blow you over. That's how weak the foundation of your business is. You don't have strength. Your business is weak. If you use delayed gratification, you can get your business to be strong. And when all kinds of things come up, you have the strength to endure. And the only way to get that strength is to exercise delayed gratification. Not saying you're not going to go out and get these things at some point in your career, but what we're suggesting is that you hold off on that first truck. Get your truck, get going, build financial strength, make purchasing decisions perhaps on your second truck. By then, you'll have a firm grasp of the owner-operator business model. You'll be in much better position to going forward. Your finances should be strong, very strong. You have many more options. But when you have very low finances, your options are limited. And you can't take time off. You always have to work. You can never not have cash flow because your bills won't allow it. And then something happens to the truck that's not covered under warranty, it can really set you back. So keep this in mind that as you're new to the owner-operator business model, the guys who are most successful have the discipline to use the concept of delayed gratification. All right, guys, that's all I got for you. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the internet.